Welcome to Crafty Café, a monthly offering from the Pflugerville Public Library, usually held the third Sunday of each month and currently being offered virtually. I'm Meg Miller, an Adult Services Librarian, here with another fun craft geared for ages 12 and up. Those who registered through the library calendar can pick up their material supply kits between November 15th and November 30th. For everyone else watching, we hope you are able to give this project a try. Let's get started by gathering materials for this do-it-yourself wrapping paper and bows. Material supply kits this month also came in our envelopes and will contain kind of the basic items that we'll be using. So rolled up, you have some brown and some white butcher paper. We're also providing a permanent metallic gold marker as well as a permanent fine line black pen. The small Ziploc bag will have several brads in that will be used with the bow making, as well as some adhesive dots in a little roll there. We're also providing 2 colors of stamp pads. And then additionally, we have some recycled book pages that we'll be using. And from some really cool books that were weeded out, this strips from an atlas. So you'll have some maps on either side. Its spine was broken, it was weeded out, it wasn't gonna have a good life. So this is giving it extra life. And then the other strips are actually from another damaged book that was Monet's Water Lilies. So just the beautiful colors and designs there that we'll be using. Additionally, some supplies that you might want to have on hand if you've got them around would be a stapler and some scissors. Although with the paper, you are going to be fairly easy to tear it down if you needed to, but scissors will get that distinct cut. Additionally, if you happen to have some stamps, this is a project that would do well with stamping, as well as kind of some other techniques that we're going to use. And since we're only providing 2 colors of stamp pads, if you've got other stamp pads, that'd be great. Or if you've got some like washable markers, that's something we could use as well. So now that we've got all of our supplies at the ready, we'll need to clean off workspace. And if you would prefer, you could put something down. The permanent markers and some of the ink might bleed through the paper a bit, but it shouldn't do too much damage to any work surface that you're using. So let's get this all cleaned up and ready to do some work. All right, so I've got all my paper pulled out. Let's start with the wrapping paper ideas, and we'll move on to bows in the later part of the video. So I've got both ink pads, stamps, markers, pens. If you saw the picture in the beginning, in the intro slide, you'll see my little first test design of some wrapping paper here. This is actually just fingerprint flowers. So each of the petals are my fingerprint, as well as the center. And then I just took the fine line pen, drew a bit of a line there, and accented it with the gold, which I thought was really fun. Another thing, if you are doing with like fingerprints, that even adds an extra really cool layer, I think, to the personalization of something like this. So like if I was going to maybe make a light string, I could do that, and maybe I want my bolts to be a little smaller, so I'm going to use a smaller finger and kind of just put my little garland here with my lights on it. And then I can also use the black pen to add details to each of the lights. And it's not any super sophisticated drawing that I'm really doing, but it's just that fun little, so I had the flowers, but I mean, you could also do so many really cool things. Ed Emberley has a book on fingerprint painting, and so I could do, you know, an animal, if I was giving this to someone maybe who liked caterpillars, or maybe it's a baby gift, something like that. And then I can give him little accents with my gold pen, and maybe some little antenna, and an eyeball, and a smile, and he is on his way. Similar for, and now definitely not permanent marker. I'm not using these two permanent markers. I'm using washable markers. If I wanted to do a different color fingerprint, and I am gonna have to put kind of a lot of ink on there to really get some good color there. But as it's washable, I'll be able to clean my finger off later on. So if I wanted to do, you know, some orange petals in with my purplish petals. So really the options for you in doing some wrapping paper like this are pretty limitless. Really just to your own imagination and some of the tools that you have really around your house. So like I said, if you happen to have actual stamps, and so even two, I don't have any blue or a little bit of green that I would be able to use in conjunction with my other fingerprints, and all just kind of cool things that we can make. This is just basic butcher paper that we purchased in a large roll. Not really very expensive. It's something that is pretty easy to wrap. Now I am limited by the width. I didn't have kind of a longer roll, but I could have cut pieces as long as I'd like. And then I liked that I had that there, and I could really make this, you know, specific to a particular person that I might, you know, have in mind for a gift or something along those lines. So we hope that you find some cool ways to decorate your wrapping paper, and let's move on to making a couple of bows to add on the top once we've got things wrapped. Moving on to bows, this is where we will use our recycled book pages. So just the text pages. We've got the strips from the Monet book and the strips from the Atlas, as well as the little roll of adhesive dots. When you pull off, a lot of them in the kits had wax paper on the outside. When you pull off that wax paper, make sure you don't just throw it away. Very likely several of the dots will transfer to the wax paper, so you'll want to hang on to those so we can make use of them. This will also be where you would want to have your stapler and scissors if you have them. If not, we should be able to complete these bows with just the adhesive dots. And hopefully everyone has enough to do at least 2 bows with the adhesive dots. I'm going to make use of the stapler a little bit so I can make a few more. So with the longer strips of the Monet book, you should have 4 longer strips, and then there is one that's slightly shorter, and then one that's very short. That very short one's going to be our very middle, the next one up, and then you'll have one strip that I'm going to set aside because that will be my tail at the end. And most of these strips are double-sided, so you can kind of decide which side color you like the best and use that as the outside. So as you can tell with these 2 pieces, our first step is just to create a loop. So I'm going to grab one of my dots off the wax paper. It doesn't want to come off as easily as the other paper it came on, but you'll be able to get it off. You probably can't see there on my thumbs, a little dot. And I'm just going to take one of my other loops, and I'm going to put my dot on the end. Let's do that one. So Sometimes I might have to use my fingernail from the other hand to get that dot to transfer right because it's stuck to me. And I am going to just match my ends up and make a little loop there. And so I have 2 larger loops, 1 smaller loop, and then I have 1 more piece that I actually want to do in the middle. So I'm going to do this one with the darker side because I've got 2 lighter loops and 1 darker loop. But I'm going to go ahead and pull him around a little bit more so that it's slightly smaller. I could also, with scissors, cut off a length to make it slightly smaller. And now this time I'm just going to use the stapler. And so now we want to create the kind of figure 8 shape here with the pieces that will be in the middle. Using a stapler will be fine because you won't really see it once your bow is put together. You do want to make sure that you're closer to the center than really I was on this one. It'll probably be a little bit over. So I'm going to just go ahead and go on to the next one. So I'm going to come down here. I want to make sure that my figure 8 is about the center of my bow piece. And staple. Basically, we are going to be building our bow one on top of the other. Like so. So in this first smallest piece, I have already placed one of the adhesive dots. So since this is my smallest loop, I'm going to just push there so he'll be connected. And so that'll actually be the last piece that I put on completely. So what I'm going to want to do is make my other loops. So smallest to lightest. And it's getting to be kind of a lot of staples, so very likely what I'll use is the adhesive dots between all of my layers. That way I don't have too much additional space in between. If I had some double-sided tape, that would also work for a project like this. So I've got one of the darker colored and then one of the lighter colored. Get myself another adhesive dot here. Next darker color up. And then I've got my smallest one here. Right there. So you can see how we're starting to build that kind of bow shape. And I might decide that that's about as big as I want it, only 4 rather than using my 5th. So then I've got what I'm going to use as the tail of my ribbon. And I think I do want it to have kind of that little traditional kind of end to it. So I'm going to place my 2 ends together, kind of squeeze them, not really folding, but just squeeze. And then I'm just going to snip off that inside corner so that then when I pull it out, I've got those kind of traditional bow points. And you know what, maybe that's a little long, so I'm going to trim it down and make my bow corner again for this one. Oh, that was the wrong side. That's alright. Just come back here, go this way. So because I cut from the open edge, I had a point rather than my little inverted there, so now I've got one last adhesive dot. Rather than putting it on here, I'm going to put it on my little bow piece here. Put myself fairly centered. Put that down there. And then now I've got one fun little bow of beautiful Monet water lilies that I can use on one of my items once I wrap them. And so let's take a look at another style of bow. So I am actually going to use my book pages rather than the map pages for this one, because I'd like to use one of the brads, because this should be a pretty easy one. So again, I want to have strips. If I don't have any scissors, I would just kind of fold out my strips here by accordion folding my book page so that they match up, so that I know, and just creasing them back and forth on those lines. You may have done something similar to this when you were in school. Kind of adding a little bit of moisture to that creased edge will help it come off even easier. Or if you've got scissors, you can cut the strips off. A paper cutter even would give you a great straight cut. I'm definitely not one of those crafters who very easily cuts a straight line on the first try. Sometimes even with a paper cutter. So just making sure that my strip is the same on my second page. If you've got a bigger book that you've recycled pages from, you could do bigger bows, but this one's going to be a fairly small because this is just an old Reader's Digest condensed versions. If you remember those, they were amazing and had some beautiful binding. And let's see. So now I've got 6 strips here. And what I'm going to do is going to ultimately look a little bit more like a traditional bow as well. So I am taking one corner and I'm folding it towards the middle. So just to give myself a sense of where that middle is, I'm going to put a little fold in there. So I can bring it around and right about that middle piece. Making sure that my corner is not sticking out the side, it's really all the way in there. So again, if I could use one of my glue dots there, a piece of double-sided tape, I'm going to use my stapler. If you had actual glue, glue stick would probably do that as well. It dries a little quicker on paper, but not quite that fast. So it might be something that you'll need to have hold on to or let sit for a while in between. So basically what I've got is kind of this little shoehorn piece here. So I'm going to go ahead and make several more of those through this other paper. You can do so there's a couple of variations. So I've brought this one around to the right side. I could bring this side around as well. I want to come from the left side so that when it comes around, kind of one goes one way and the other goes the other way. Making that little point there as much as I can. And then, so here are my first two. We're going to sit like that, and that's a start. And really, in my example, I did only 4 of these. Let's deconstruct a little bit. So 1, 2, 3. I had a third one. We'll lay right here. And around from the opposite direction. Kind of pushing this up. I've definitely seen this done with several more than 3. You could go and make a much bigger, fluffier bow. But so there's my first 3. And on this particular one, I'm going to do a staple. One staple will get all 3 held together, and then I can just kind of fluff up my corners there. And then for the final one on this particular one, you could keep going layering, but what I did was I actually just grabbed a loop, because eventually I was going to want that middle loop there, and put that in. So, and I did trim that particular page down. And on this one, let's use a glue dot, because it will kind of be the inside piece that is most seen. And I'm going to use a second glue dot to adhere it to the bottom pieces. There's my little guy there. And then my extra leg, I'm just going to kind of slide through here and set there where I feel like will really kind of fluff up and look like, you know, a very traditional bow that you've probably gotten on a number of presents. Really recycled, made out of recycled book page. We've got this other really kind of fun one. If you've got the gold marker from earlier, you can always add accents to these, where, you know, you kind of, even before on your strips, you could add the gold or another color, and then as you wrap them up, you would get to the bows like this. And then again, to adhere them to a gift, either something like these adhesive dots or double-sided tape would work, to just wrap up a gift and do like that. So actually I didn't end up using the brads on that one. This type of bow, not really in the thicker paper, but in a paper like this, the brad does go through really nicely. And so how I kind of just drew a dot right there on that one, you could actually make that as the brad. And I did provide one of these fun little brads in the shape of a sparkly star. So that then could be the top layer through all of that to the bow underneath. And there you go. So that is a way to really do it yourself with some wrapping paper and some bows to add that extra little personal touch and show your crafty side to those you give gifts to.